Thanks, Andrew. Good morning, members and those watching online to this, which is the final planning committee of this particular council. Can I start with apologies for absence, please?
Yeah, we have apologies from Councillor Priest and Councillor Tracy.
Thank you. Going around members' declarations of interest. I'm presuming none.
Yes, I've got one.
Sean, yeah.
I'm a county council appointed member of the Coastal Conservation Board.
Noted, thank you. Moving on then, public questions.
None received.
Member questions.
None received.
The minutes of the previous meeting, which in your report are pages 1 to 44. Are members content that I sign those virtually anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Consensus? Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got Terry Ale and Simon. Thank you. Before I start into the applications then, I'm just going to ask Simon, because we're meeting remotely, just to run through the format and how the meeting will be conducted through the two applications that we've got this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So we've got the two applications. The first one that's going to be considered is the one at Kidnappers Lane. The second one is the quarry at Norton. Just for members and people making representations to the meetings, I think certainly the county councillors are familiar with WebEx. But just to say to you, if you're struggling with your connection, then turn your screen off. But if at all possible, leave your screen on. And I'd ask that you don't leave the meeting during the consideration of the applications. In terms of requesting to speak, the WebEx system has changed a bit. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, you can see that there's a smiley face. And when you press on that, there's an option to raise your hand. So that's how you raise your hand. The other way you can do it is to click on participants and then press against your name. You can request to speak that way. If you're having real difficulties, because it's a relatively small number of members this morning, you can wave at the screen, and I'm sure myself and the chair will notice that you are there. So the first application, like I said this morning, is at Kidnappers Lane. The presenting officer is Sarah Pearce, and we've only got one representation to the meeting, and that is County Councillor Ian Dobie. So back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. And I've lost my screen. I crashed out. Sorry about that. Crashed out. Right, I'm going to Sarah to present the first application. Over to you, Sarah. I will mute.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I'll wait for Simon to catch up. Selecting his highlighter. Okay, good morning, everyone. This is planning application number 200032 for the variation of condition 2, which relates to the scope of the development, relating to planning consent 190058, dated 21st of July 2020, which was for the construction of new sixth form of entry secondary school building with new all-weather pitch, sports playing field, a multi-use games area, on-site parking and other associated works. And this is for the substitution of revised plans to show an increased number of photovoltaic cells and a minor amendment to the proposed external compound within the grounds of the school, and the site was on land between Farm Lane and Kidnappers Lane in Cheltenham, Gloucestershire. Next slide, please. Members will recall that the planning application for the proposed new school was determined by the Planning Committee on the 14th of May 2020, and the determination was subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement to secure biodiversity offset land. This 106 agreement was completed and signed on the 17th of July 2020, and the Planning Permission certificate was issued on the 21st of July. At that time, whilst not forming part of the submitted proposals, the applicant committed to improving the sustainability credentials of the building to a net zero carbon emission with an energy performance rating of A. And it is to address these issues that this further application has been made and is before the committee for determination. To further update you, a written application was made to seek judicial review of the planning decision 190058. On October the 29th, 2020, the High Court refused permission to proceed with a judicial review claim. On the 5th of November, the claimant requested a renewal of their application to be heard by way of an oral hearing. The oral hearing was initially listed to be heard on the 15th of December. However, this was postponed until the 23rd of February, 2021, when Judge H.J. Cotter granted leave for a judicial review on one point of the claimant's submission only, and that was in respect of valued landscape. The date for that hearing was set for the 16th of March and was set down for a day, recognising the urgency to conclude this matter. However, on Monday of this week, the 15th of March, GCC was in receipt of a sealed court order and had confirmation from the High Court that the hearing scheduled for the 16th of March had been vacated. So the judicial review will not be pursued. Okay, I will briefly run through the basics of the proposal and then move on to describe the site and surroundings and show a few more illustrations of detail of the proposal. But the image that you can see before you now is one which you will have seen before at the previous meeting, and it's an artist's impression of what the new school will look like. So this application seeks to substitute amended plans which respond directly to the County Council's commitment to address the climate change emergency. The approved scheme did include a small array of photovoltaic cells on the roof. This, together with a fabric-first design philosophy, already achieved significant betterment when compared with the 2013 building regulation requirements. But the revisions proposed within this application include covering the whole of the proposed roof with photovoltaic cells, and in doing so, lifting the sustainability credentials of the building to a net zero carbon emission with an energy performance certificate rating of A. Next slide, please.
You off mute? Just struggling, Sarah. Just move the slide. Bear with me a sec.
Yeah. Right, this slide shows the approved roof plan, and the area in green illustrates the extent of the photovoltaic panels that have been approved. Next slide, please. Right. Now, this is the new proposal, and it will introduce photovoltaic cells and increase the height of the roof parapet wall. The area covered by the photovoltaic panels will increase from 650 metres squared to 1,500 metres squared. The parapet wall will increase by 450 millimetres on the main classroom buildings and 575 millimetres on the main hall. And the proposal will introduce panels onto the roof of the classrooms, forming the sides of the U shape, in addition to those already approved on the main part of the main building between the halls. There'll be no panels on the roof of the main hall or the sports hall. Okay, next slide, please. Right, further to this, 2 extra fire escapes will be provided, which will be screened from view by the parapet edge, and these are indicated by the areas underneath the red squares. Next slide, please. At the request of the Academy Trust, the size of the storage compound highlighted by the red cloud has been increased. This opportunity has been taken within the application to seek approval for this minor amendment as well. This slide shows the approved compound. Next slide, please. And this slide shows the proposed amendment. The requirement for a larger compound results from a review of the storage requirements undertaken by the Balcarres Academy Trust. And you can see the difference between the two slides. It's not a great deal of difference. Thank you. Moving on to slide 8 now. Thank you. Moving on to describe the site and the surroundings. This location plan is the same as in the committee report and that you have previously seen. The application site remains the same as previously and is shown as a solid red line, with other land in the applicant's control shown as a dotted line. This is also the location of the ecology biodiversity offset land covered by the 106 agreement. For intake 2, Kidnappers Lane runs in a dogleg to the north and east of the school. Farm Lane runs to the west of the school. Sherdington Road runs to the north, so large, that's it. Church Lane runs to the south. The scheduled ancient monument is, you can see on the plan, is called the Moat, and that is to the southeast of the site. Policy site area MD4 of the Cheltenham plan includes the red line application site and the land to the north as well, where you can see sort of black squares. There's new housing development to the west, the Red Row housing development, around about where it says the words Leckhampton Farm. Yeah. And there's a recently permitted development, housing development to the east with 25 houses as well, roughly about where the MP is in Leckhampton. The boundary of the AONB is along Church Lane to the south, and the property known as Little Vatch lies to the west of the site, just up a little bit. That's it, there. Hatherley Brook lies to the east of the site, and the public right-of-way that crosses the site is shown in green. Next slide, please. Right, this is the same location plan with an aerial photograph. The proposed school site is located within the Leckhampton area on the southern outskirts of Cheltenham. The 5.66 hectare site is roughly rectangular in shape, largely comprised of fields which have been used for arable, agricultural purposes and equestrian use. There's a former plant nursery located to the north of Kidnappers Lane. Existing residential properties lie on the west side of Farm Lane, comprising predominantly of dormer bungalows, all east facing towards the site. Views of the site from these units are currently screened by the existing established hedge that borders the west boundary of the site. Right, the site is not within a protected landscape. However, the green belt and area of outstanding natural beauty share a boundary on the southern side of Church Road, which lies approximately 300 metres from the site. A prominent feature of the AONB and the surrounding landscape is Leckhampton Hill, which incorporates a large footpath network that affords views across the site towards Cheltenham. I've got some photographs later to show that. The material considerations of policy, need, highways and transport, landscape, impact, including the AONB, ecological impact, archaeological impact, heritage, design and amenity were considered in full in the original report and were discussed in full at the planning meeting in May. The principle of the development was established at that committee and through the subsequent granting of permission upon completion of the planning obligation to secure the biodiversity offset land. And the decision notice was issued on the 21st of July. The site is now included in the as part of policy MD4 in the adopted Cheltenham plan. Material considerations relevant to this application relate not to the siting of a new school in this location as this has been established, but to the potential landscape and visual impact of the proposed additional photovoltaic panels on the roof and the potential glint and glare arising from them, together with the increase in height of the parapet. Next slide, please. Okay, this photograph is taken from Leckhampton Hill. The school can be seen in the centre of the photograph. That's right, and the recent Red Row development with the red roofs is to the west. And in the foreground is the grey farm buildings adjacent to the Moat scheduled monument. Next slide, please. This photograph was taken, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with, adjacent to the Devil's Chimney. And again, you can see the school site, the Red Row, red roofs, and the context of Cheltenham behind, right into the distance of the Malvern Hills, say. And next slide, please. Right, this photograph was taken from the Cotswold Way, and again, it's a more panoramic view across Cheltenham. You can see the built development in the background, the school in the middle, and the open green fields in the more foreground. Next slide, please. The PV cells will cover a majority of the available roof area and, as I've said before, increase the height of the roof parapet wall. The edge of the roof parapet has been increased in size to provide a safe working environment to any operative that needs to visit the roof for maintenance and to screen the solar array from view. Now, from this point forward, we're going to be doing a bit of a spot the difference between the slides, and all the slides obviously are artist's impressions. So this slide shows the approved scheme parapet level with the red dotted line along the roof edge. And this is the main entrance approach just south of the junction of Farm Lane and Kidnappers Lane. Next slide, please. Now this slide is the same view, but with the increased parapet level. The red dotted line again illustrating the approved parapet level. So 450 millimetres increase is roughly about 6 bricks plus mortar above, and that's above the main entrance and the classroom block. And the 575 millimetre increase is about 8 bricks with mortar on the main roof of the hall. And the impact of this is the brickwork becomes slightly taller, and the proportion of the brickwork above the first floor windows between the windows and the parapet coping is larger. The parapet, of course, also provides screening to the mechanical engineering equipment that will be on the roof. And the eagle-eyed view may be able to spot the difference between the two photographs. There's a vertical louved screen, yes, on the left-hand side of the picture. And this provides screening and for the ventilation and the air source, both the ventilation to the air source heat pumps, and which sit behind that part of the building. Next slide, please. Again, a few more slides. The same approach here for the main entrance. This is the approved scheme. Next slide. And this is the amended scheme. You can look at the red dotted line to see the difference. And these images demonstrate that the additional height of the parapet has sort of minimal effect on the overall perception of the building in terms of its height and its overall scale. Next slide, please. Again, the main entrance, this is the approved scheme. Next slide. This is again the main entrance, and you can just about see the additional brick height. Okay, next slide, please. The following slides illustrate the artist's impressions, aerial views showing the photovoltaic panels. Slide 19, please. There we go. Here you can see the photovoltaic panels on the roof covering a majority of the roof. And Kidnappers Lane is to the right of the slide. And the pedestrian entrance, you can just about see that's the vehicular entrance, and pedestrian entrance is just at the bottom of the picture. There we go, that's it, yeah. Next slide, please. Yes, again, this is an aerial view showing the photovoltaic, can't say that word, photovoltaic panels from the south and from the playing field. And to the left of the side, you can see Farm Lane and the main school entrance. And the main difference is that the photovoltaic panels are on the two classroom wings, forming the sides to the U shape. Lovely, thank you. Next slide, please. And this one's a bit difficult to see really, but it just shows the building elevations with the increased in height. Next slide, please. So the possible effects of glint and glare arising from the solar panel development on the roof at the proposed school have been assessed. And it relates to the possible impact of glint and glare upon surrounding dwellings, pedestrians on the nearby Cotswolds and the Cotswolds Way and the footpaths, aviation activity associated with Gloucestershire Airport. The officer report describes the findings in detail in paragraphs 815 to 28 of the report. And there are also some plans, there are some aerial photograph plans and figures showing the locations of the nearest dwelling sectors. No impacts upon pedestrians or the aviation receptors for both the approaches, the runways and the air control tower are expected. Solar effect reflections are geometrically possible towards 7 out of the 12 assessed dwelling receptors. As again, I refer you to sections 815 to 28 of the officer's report. However, effects are only predicted to be experienced at dwellings represented by 2 dwelling receptors along Farm Lane in the immediate vicinity of the school. The report done by Pager Power took in the worst case scenario, and that was really without any vegetation. So based on a conservative approach, whereby it is assumed that partial views of the panels are possible, moderate impact is predicted. However, no mitigation is recommended because the duration of effects will be significantly or entirely reduced by the identified screening, and the effects could only be experienced from upper floors of the dwellings due to the existing vegetation and the proposed native hedgerows. No objections have been received from statutory consultees and no public comments have been made. The County Planning Authority considers that the design of a proposed new school, through the use of appropriate materials and technology, together with innovative design, has met the requirements of paragraph 150B of the National Planning Policy Framework, which seeks to ensure that the new development should be planned for in ways that can help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, such as through its location, orientation and design. This amendment of the approved design will contribute towards meeting the Council's climate change strategy. Last slide, please. Right, the recommendation remains as written in the report. You'll see from the report that some of the wording of the conditions has changed since the original permission was issued. This is in recognition of the submission of schemes which have been approved in writing for conditions 14, 16, 23 and 26. These conditions have been amended accordingly to ensure compliance with the approved schemes. Since the report was written, submissions have also been approved for condition 12. Members will see that there's an update paper was circulated just prior to the meeting, which I hope I can take as read. So the recommendation is that planning permission be granted for the variation of condition 2 in accordance with regulation 3 of the Town and Country Planning General Regulations 1992 for the reasons set out in the report and subject to the conditions set out in the report and the existing planning obligation being endorsed. So the existing planning obligation to retain and maintain the offset land will run with this new permission as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah.
Stop sharing.
Sorry.
I'm just going to stop sharing, okay?
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to pick up on the last thing that you mentioned there in relation to, before we push on, condition 12. Are members in receipt of that? Have members seen that this morning? All members, because you'll be determining what's on the paper and that condition. Okay, thank you.
We're getting nods from everyone, Chair.
Yeah. Councillor, I believe Councillor Dobie is due to speak. Is that right?
Unfortunately, he's not able to attend the meeting, so he's asked that his representation is read out, and I can do that now if you like, Chair.
Yeah. Do you want to move? Yeah, by all means. Because of the distance between Simon and myself, are members picking Simon up on their microphones?
All looks good. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So this representation is from Councillor Ian Dobie, who is the County Councillor for Leckhampton and Warden Hill and the Borough Councillor for Warden Hill. And it's quite short, so I'll read it to you. I have been a supporter of the high school Leckhampton throughout my time as County Councillor representing the area. When I saw the original plans for the new school, I noted that they could have greener. They were not in full conformity with Gloucestershire County Council and United Kingdom government statements of intent to commit to radical reduction of carbon dioxide emissions. At meetings at Shire Hall, I therefore pushed for the planned gas heating system for the new school to be replaced by a modern heat pump and for solar panels to be included in its design. These improvements have subsequently been incorporated into the latest plans, which are now before this committee. The roof-based solar panels are unobtrusive and will make a significant contribution to making this new school the greenest secondary in Gloucestershire. I trust they will be endorsed by the committee. Regards, Ian. That's it, Chair.
Thank you. Then it's appropriate we go on to member questions, if there are any.
I'm not seeing any, Chair, in terms of indication.
No questions.
No questions from members.
Then we would open a debate normally with a recommendation from a member. So if Simon, yeah, you're on.
Yes, happy to recommend this, and if I might just make a few little comments. Quite frankly, the height in the parapets is going to be totally unnoticeable. The only thing that where there could be some sort of question is perhaps glare from the solar panels, but quite frankly, you will only get glare when on a bright sunny day, and there'll be glare from other places on such days that we don't tend to get very much. But the increase in green credentials generally for the whole application, I think, are absolutely magnificent. And I can only echo what Councillor Dobie says on that one. So yes, I'm more than happy to recommend this.
Thanks, Simon. Seconder.
I can see Stephen
Stephen,
Hurst.
Stephen Hurst. Yeah. Do you need to speak, Stephen, or you? Well, if you're speaking, put your microphone on.
I don't really need to say much, Chair. I just think it's a fine application which the prospective pupils should be really proud of. Thank you.
Yeah. I've got Graham Morgan, followed by Bernie Fisher.
Yes, Chair. I say that I'm very pleased that the county adopted the changes in what a marvellous school with regard to green credentials, which will hopefully emulate again more in the future. Thank you.
Yeah. Bernie.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I welcome it. I live not far from it, and I will not benefit in any way, but the children who live around my area will certainly benefit. Some travel to Churchtown now and all over the parish. It is a good step in the right direction, and the Balcarras organisation to be running it fills me with confidence. We have very high standards of education in Cheltenham, and that's reflected in our population. We have the highest graduate per 100 population in Gloucestershire, and it's hope that it'll continue all over the county, because we spoke yesterday about education in our county, and there are parts of our county that require a lot of new investment in our schooling. Certainly the Forest of Dean and some parts of Gloucester. But Cheltenham is lucky, or fortunate really. But remember, the dearest part of the school is not the building. It will be the people who will support the children, educate the children, the equipment required and things like that. So let's get on with it. Let's support it. And I look forward to seeing kids from my area go into that school. Thank you for your time.
Cheers. Dr. Cordwell, your hand is up. Bernie, if you can take your hand down, and Graham. Yeah, okay.
Right, thank you. I support the application and the recommendation. I've read the Glint and Glare report, and I don't think that is going to be particularly obtrusive or for very long for where it does hit the escarpment. So I'm very happy to support it.
Thank you.
No others indicating.
No others indicating. I'm minded. Do we legally have to run through by name, or will a show of hands do in order to?
We can do it, to be absolutely clear, we can do it by, it won't take us long. So just
Okay.
shall I do that now, Chair?
Yeah, if you will, run through members and either say for, against, or abstain.
So, Chair, we've got the recommendation that's been put before you by officers and in the report, moved by Councillor Simon Wheeler and seconded by Councillor Stephen Hurst. So I'll just go through your names. For, against, or abstain. Councillor Robert. For. Councillor David Brown.
Very much for.
Councillor Dr. John Caldwell.
For.
Councillor Bernie Fisher.
For.
Councillor Terry Hale.
For.
Councillor Steve.
For.
Councillor Graham Morgan.
For.
Councillor Sean Parsons.
For.
Councillor Alan Priest.
He's not here.
Absent.
Not
We've got apologies for Alan.
Yeah. Councillor Steve Robinson.
For.
Have we got Councillor Pam Tracy? No.
No.
We've got apologies for Pam.
Fine. You there, Robert?
Robert Buttons.
I am. I didn't hear you first of all, but I am for.
Okay. Councillor Simon Wheeler.
For.
Councillor Will Winter-Clyde.
For.
And finally, Chair, Councillor Phil Alford.
Ooh. For.
So, the recommendation is carried unanimously, 13.
Yeah. Members, thank you for that. What we're proposing now is to take a little short break while Andrea runs through the list of speakers for this application. So I'm saying 5 minutes, which would bring us back at 10:40. Okay? That's just to make sure you'd indicated they wanted to be online for this application.
So if they get members to turn their video off and
Vid's off and yeah.
That time.
Yeah.
Because we will be live on YouTube throughout.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I'll go back to where I was. Nick, if everyone else can go on mute, and I'll ask Nick to do his presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Good morning, everyone listening and contributing. If we could have the slideshow up, please, Simon.
Yeah, no, I'm just struggling just a second just to get to the slideshow. Bear with me.
Not a problem.
Yeah, bear with me a sec. And Andy's my PC is just frozen. Hang on.
Right, sorry, Chair. If you can bear with me, Caroline's just signing out and then joining back in. Caroline, can you confirm? Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Could I just ask for the time being, whilst the officer makes his presentation, you just pop yourself on mute, and then when you're required to fall forward, the chairman will ask you to come forward and present your speech.
Okay.
Thank you. Right, Simon, have you managed to call up the presentation?
I'm just getting there now, Anne. Bear with me.
Okay, if not, bear with me. I'll call it up and I'll see if I can share it.
I'm going to be there. Can you see it? Can you see it now?
Yep.
I can. Yep.
Yeah. Let me try and start it. Hang on.
Okay.
Right. I think you've got it. You've got it there, Nick.
Yep.
Thank you, Simon. As I say, good morning, all. This is planning application for the southern extension, including a revision to the consented working arrangements with restoration to a combination of agriculture, nature conservation and geological interest at Breedon's Naunton Quarry, Buckle Street, Naunton, Gloucestershire. We could have slide 2, please. This image is of the current operational quarry area, looking from the north towards the proposed extension area in the far background. The proposal seeks to create a southern extension to the current extraction area with revisions to the approved working and restoration scheme. The proposed extension is expected to yield approximately 5.8 million tonnes of limestone. Combined with the remaining consented reserve of 2.2 million tonnes, assessed at time of submission of the application details in 2018, the development would extend the life of the quarry to approximately 16 years. The site is an allocated site in the Minerals Local Plan. Moving on to the matters that I have considered on page 147 of the report, these are the principle of the development and the extent to which this development complies with national planning policies and the policies of the development plan for Gloucestershire, the impact of the development on the special qualities of the Cotswold AONB, impact of the associated heavy goods vehicle traffic, the degree of cumulative impact arising from these proposals, impact of the development upon local residential amenity, and then grouped together under other issues, hydrogeology, flood, biodiversity, archaeology, and these are contained within the report. We move to slide number 3, please. Thanks, Simon. Naunton Quarry, formerly known as Huntsman's Quarry, but renamed by the current mineral operator, is located within the Cotswolds AONB, approximately 2 kilometres to the northeast of Naunton and 6 kilometres to the west of Stow-on-the-Wold. The only entrance to the quarry is located directly off Buckle Street, a Class 3 highway that runs in a northwest to southeast direction, and that's the one that goes straight through the middle there. The current extraction area of the quarry lies to the west of Buckle Street. just off to the left there, that's it. And the extension area is to the south of the current workings, just there. While the red line area of this application includes the processing plant area and main access to the east of Buckle Street. On that side, that's correct. The quarry has been operating since the early 1900s. Residential properties include the buildings associated with Summerhill Farm and Summerhill Cottage to the south of the site, and also James Barn Farm, which is further to the south. The nearest residential property itself is Huntsman's House, located to the east and southeast of the application site, and that's highlighted there by Simon. Number 4, please. I'm just waiting for my screen to load, sorry. A public bridleway runs alongside the west boundary of both the extension area and the existing quarry. A vegetated soil bund with an extra section of periphery forestry planting effectively screens views into the existing quarry from the northern sector of the public bridleway, leading south from the minor road linking Buckle Street with Gating Power. This minor road forms the northern boundary of the existing quarry. Buckle Street forms the eastern boundary of the quarry area, and the south boundary, the proposed extension area, comprises open fields with very few features. The topography slopes downwards north to south across the existing mineral extraction area towards a transverse valley feature at the junction between the existing quarry and the extension. The land forming the proposed extension then rises steeply again to the south before reaching an elevated plateau beyond the southern site boundary. And slide number 5, please. This photograph shows the method of breaking the rock using a pecker attached to a 360 excavator. That's the one in the middle, so that it's easier to move. And also in the background, the breakthrough location into the proposed extension area. That's in the area just to the right of the large pile of stones, the taller one. And that's the extension area just there. Moving on to slide number 6, please. This is the underpass which links the east processing area with the west extraction area. This enables quarry traffic to pass from one side of Buckle Street to another without causing risk to highway safety or disturbance on the local highway. The underpass was initially constructed for the 1996 planning permission, which permitted extraction initially to the west of Buckle Street. The applicant entered into a legal agreement to provide for necessary highway works at the time, which also provided for the cost of removing the underpass following the cessation of mineral extraction. Due to the extended period of extraction now proposed with the southern extension, that being this application, a variation or amendment will be required to that original agreement to account for the extra time and the greater costs anticipated at the time of that happening. That, however, is beyond consideration in this application today. The matter is as yet unresolved, and the recommendation today is made on the proviso that that variation or amendment will be required prior to consent being issued. On to the next slide, please. These are some very quick run-throughs of the phasing. This plan shows the current situation. The processing area to the east of Buckle Street, where it says quarry plant site. The current quarry area to the west of Buckle Street. That's it. And the proposed extension area to the south of the current quarry, which is limited by the red line boundary, and then the inside the extraction area by the dotted line. And moving on to the next slide, please. These are the phase 1 workings to show that it's going to move from the southeast corner in a westwards direction. Slide number 9, please. Again, phase 2 working, carrying on in the same pattern. Phase 3 on slide number 10 shows it moving again. And finally, the phase 4 working, showing the complete working out of the site. If we go on to slide number 12, that is the concept restoration plan for the site. Again, on to 13. I've taken some photos. These were taken late last week, so they're contemporaneous photos of the site. This is the view west from inside Buckle Street, looking up towards the proposed bund area and the extracting area. The existing extraction area is to the right of the photo beyond the existing tree screen. And slide number 14, please. This is the view south from the extension area. Visible on the left skyline are the properties at Summer Hill, and also on the right skyline, just there. This is the extent of the extension area, not the extent of the extraction area. On to slide number 15. This is the view from the southern boundary of the proposed extension. The marker post in the centre foreground, where the red marker is, that shows the edge of the application boundary itself. The extraction limit is some way inside that, beyond it, identified by a distinct set of marker flags. All boundaries will again be checked prior to commencement to ensure that they're completely correct. In the right background is the existing quarry, sort of grey area. Further to the left background are the stockpiles of Tinker's Barn Quarry, just over the hedge there. That's the minor road going down to Guyton Power. And further again to the rear on the horizon, against the tree line, is the Cotswold Farm Park, just over to the right there, beyond the grey area. Further right, that's it. That's fantastic. Slide number 16, please. This is the photo of Summerhill from the very edge of the proposed boundary. At this point, a bund will be constructed, and beyond that, the extraction area will be set back and be below ground level, and also the level of the bund. On to 17, please. This is the view northwest towards the Bridleway, running along the west boundary of the current quarry, and that's the line of the Bridleway just up there in the far distance. And slide number 18, which is the last of the virtual site visits. This is the view northeast across the quarry, there in the foreground, and the processing area on the further background to the right. Just over the road, you can see one of the buildings there. That's it. Therefore, the recommendation remains as written in the report, committee. One comment I do have to make is that condition 33, as it is worded currently and prior to correction, has east and west juxtaposed, in that it only refers to the processing area and the existing quarry in the wrong places. So that needs to be corrected before that condition is finalised. It has no material impact upon the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, now we can move into those that have patiently been waiting to speak. So I start with the first objector.
That's Caroline Wetness. Caroline, would you like to unmute yourself?
You have 4 minutes.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm objecting. I'm deeply concerned about the proposed development at Bredon Naunton Quarry. I am speaking on behalf of 30 residents of Naunton and of Summerhill. The nature of this special area will detrimentally be affected for many years, this both during the time of excavation and works and during the implementation of the mitigation works. I believe the interests of big business are being put before the interests of, one, the landscape and amenity value, and two, the natural flora and fauna that are part of the characteristics of this area of outstanding natural beauty. In addition, I do not believe that the interests of those who live and work in this area are being adequately considered. The injurious affection to the landscape, the quiet enjoyment, value and operation of existing property, local business and households are being disregarded. I'm sure that the attendant reports to the application will be voluminous and state there are no concerns that cannot and will not be mitigated, particularly by professional advisors who are acting on behalf of the applicant. We, the local residents, do not have the knowledge or financial resource to be able to provide such equally valid and opposite views. These must be considered, and I believe it is the responsibility of the local authority to facilitate this. It is strange to me, particularly having regard to the actual injurious affection loss of enjoyment, amenity and disturbance of previous works, that the applicant does not have to fund a truly independent analysis. This, to me and many others, is grossly unfair, and I believe that any determination without this will effectively amount to the planning authority acting ultra vires. Looking at a few specifics, the noise and dust will affect the equine population together with the natural flora and fauna that they may never recover. The impact of the development on local rodent network, which is quite simply not fit for this purpose, will be detrimentally affected. The quiet enjoyment of the residents will be decimated. The short, medium and long-term value of property will be affected. In the short and medium term, the blight will be considerable. I do not know whether some form of sequential test has been undertaken or indeed is required to establish whether there are other sites that could be developed in this way without the considerable harm that will be created at this location for many years. I would urge the planning authority to refuse consent, or at the very least defer this and provide local population, natural landscape, flora and fauna to be respected with a fund to enable a truly independent assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm now going to go to, I'll take the applicant first and then the two parish councils. Mr. King.
5 minutes.
You have 5 minutes, sir. You're on mute at the moment. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Graham King and I'm the Estates Manager for Breedon Southern Limited, the applicant and current operator of Naunton Quarry. Breedon Southern acquired the various assets of Huntsman's Quarries Limited back in May of 2014, and with that acquisition came the employees and the established operation, which is Naunton Quarry. Since being in control, Breedon have operated in full accordance and compliance with the extant planning permissions. As referred to in your officer's report, quarrying at Naunton Quarry has and continues to perform a strategic role across the county, principally in the supply of valued Cotswold limestone aggregate, which helps support Gloucestershire's own crushed rock land bank. We believe, as corroborated by your officer's report, that this application has demonstrated compliance with the policies of the Minerals Local Plan and is consistent with the site's allocated status in that development plan being adopted in March of 2020. The plan application before you requests permission to extract 5.5 million tonnes of limestone, which, at current sales rates and accounting for the existing permitted reserves, would take place over a 16-year term. Central to the application was a recognition and appreciation of the sensitive location within which Naunton Quarry is situated. Breedon have recently agreed to partner Naunton Parish Council and to jointly undertake a community tree planting scheme over part of its land holding. Whilst not referred to in the plan application, the measure would nonetheless assist in bolstering natural screening along a boundary close to residential properties at Summer Hill, as well as providing an important wildlife corridor to link existing woods and spinneys in the area. The idea is consistent with and supported of the County Council's own aims of planting up to 35 million trees by the year 2030. Quarrying and ancillary operations are carried out by a workforce of some 70 people who are either directly employed on site or indirectly, as is the case for hauliers. Importantly, a significant percentage of this workforce live locally, making the quarry an important employer within its rural setting. The extension proposal was an environmental impact assessment development and has been subject of rigorous technical assessment and consultation with an array of specialists, and as comprehensively detailed within your officer's report, members should be assured that this scheme can be undertaken without harm to the valued landscape or environment, to those who live or work in proximity of the site, and without adverse effect upon the surrounding highway network. The officer's report clearly sets out how the development is to be controlled, and the mitigation of potential effects has been embodied into a suite of planning conditions which will allow the development to proceed. The result is a scheme that can provide access to 5.5 million tonnes of a valued and much needed mineral resource, while still remaining consistent with the development plan policies and guidance set out at both national and local levels. Finally, regardless of this plan application's outcome, the company also intends to establish and facilitate a local liaison group and invite representatives from Gloucestershire County Council, Cotswold District Council, and local parish councils to those meetings. This will be an excellent forum to allow local councillors to understand the operations at Norton Quarry, and for Breedon to keep the group informed of current as well as intended activities, and for it to become an integral and valued part of the community. Thank you, Chairman and members.
Thank you, Mr. King. Towards the end of that, we had a user join. Would that be the other one we expected, or someone? I had some flash user just joined. Is that the young lady we were expecting from?
Sorry, Chairman. That's Maxie Freeman, I believe.
Yep, good.
Who's joining on behalf of Temple Guyton Parish Council, just in case Mr. Gower requires any support.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Well, Mr. Gower is next anyway. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Gower, and I did realise you did mention your voice earlier on. Please, if you have to speak slowly. I'm prepared to let you overrun slightly.
Thank you. I'm a parish councillor in Temple Guyton Parish Council, which has commented extensively on this application with documents loaded to the GCC planning portal in February and December 2020. The council was also involved in the Quarry Stakeholder Group meeting held in January 2020, attended by quarry operators, local parish councils, CCB and GCC. Concerns focused on the effects that the cluster of 8 local quarries has on businesses, residents and visitors in the small area bounded by the B4077 and Buckle Street in the north of the Cotswold AONB. Naunton Quarry is the largest of these and should be considered in the context of its contribution to the overall impact on the whole cluster as well as individually. TGPC welcomes the Policy Officer consultation response dated October last year, the purpose of which is stated as being intended to support the case officer and to inform an overall recommendation for decision makers. The Policy Officer's report identified several items that are needed for the application to demonstrate policy compliance. Given the context of the area, key areas of policy that are pertinent to this application include DMO2, cumulative impact, DMO3, transport, MWO2, relating to the production in the Cotswold AONB to maintain the heritage of the area. And also in the MLP, it notes that for the Naunton Quarry, it recommends a health impact assessment to take into account impacts on local communities on page 187. We are concerned that the case officer's report does not adequately address these aspects. Cumulative impact is probably our greatest concern. Quoting the policy officer's response in October last year, it states, Naunton Quarry is within an area containing a number of mineral workings, and therefore the issue of cumulative impact is a valid one that needs to be sufficiently explored. And the current body of evidence back in October does not demonstrate that the issue has been sufficiently handled. Yet the case officer has dismissed this report, as well as representations from other local parish councils, the CCB and CPRE, and numerous individuals. Instead, it quotes selectively from the applicant's supporting documentation and states that because the operation is a continuing of existing operations, the impact on residential amenity will not be significant. As a consequence, the case officer's report fails significantly on several points. It fails to address cumulative impact in the wider context of the cluster of quarries, using shared transportation routes and the sensitive locations along those routes. Tree screening, unfortunately, in this case, doesn't help residents on the B4077. It fails to highlight the absence of traffic counts and the understatement of HGV movements to the north along Buckle Street and the B4077 in the applicant's transport statement. However, another quarry application in 2019 showed that there were 400 HGV movements per day through Ford and 320 per day along Buckle Street. The application suggests that only 20% of Naunton's daily movements travel north, but as no actual figures were presented, GCC Highways were understandably unable to assess this application fully. It also fails to acknowledge or mention the noise of the Pecker with tonal elements. This is heard well away from the Naunton site and is specifically mentioned in the applicant's noise report. The UK Government Minerals website for noise assessment states that where noise has a significant tonal element, it may be appropriate to set specific limits to control this aspect. It fails to include current and reasonably foreseeable activities as recommended by the policy officer. These would clearly include the reopening of Guyton Quarry, the application to double the output at Oat Hill, unrestricted HGV movements for reinstatement at Cotswold Hill, plus increases at Grange Hill and Tinker's Barn. These have not been addressed in any part of the application or the case officer's comments. Based on international and national sources and the local context, a cumulative impact assessment should address the number and pattern of HGV movements across the area and changes over time. The impact on local communities and businesses, these could be established through a survey. Noise that goes beyond the quarry boundaries also includes noise along transport routes. More detailed assessments for sensitive locations are needed, including noise, vibration, and airborne pollution. This wouldn't just be adjacent to the site, but along the sensitive transport routes. Quarry operators and local residents should provide input, but the final assessment must be independent of all parties with an interest in the results. TGPC is not opposed to quarrying. The council fully supports quarrying where it helps to maintain the local environment. This is consistent with national planning policies and quarrying in AONBs. The council also accepts that some aggregate production is a consequence of those operations. However, we believe the overall level of production from this cluster of quarries should be balanced against the negative effects on this part of the AONB. Until the effects of cumulative impacts of current quarrying operations are established, it is not possible to judge whether the impact of this application or further developments across the cluster are balanced or not. We believe that some steps could be taken to mitigate some of the cumulative impacts across the area, including establishing and monitoring a traffic management area with restricted hours for HGV movements and reduced HGV speeds. implementing considerate driving agreements with all quarry operators, applying rigorous standards for vehicle cleaning and sheeting. Due to the lack of compliance with planning directives, especially the absence of cumulative impact assessment, Temple Guyton Parish Council requests that any decision on this application is deferred until these failures are addressed as per national and local policy requirements. This process could be completed fairly quickly with the right resources and cooperation of all parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gower. Moving on then to, I didn't get the surname, so I'm going to say Maxi.
So, sorry, Chairman, the next person to speak would be Upper Slaughter. Mr. Gower's presented on behalf of Temple Guyton. Maxi was there to support him as a representative of Temple Guyton. So is Simon there? Is he able to present Upper Slaughter's presentation?
Yeah,
I'm ready.
I don't need to time myself because this is actually quite a short representation.
Okay.
So this representation is from Amanda Davis, who is the clerk to Upper Slaughter Parish Council, and it's on behalf of Councillor Ed Cookson. So she just says in a note that Upper Slaughter Parish Council agreed at its meeting the following statement. Given our rurality, unreliability of internet and COVID restrictions, Upper Slaughter Parish Council would be pleased if the following could be read to the Planning Committee on behalf of Councillor Cookson. Upper Slaughter Parish Council continues to work with neighbouring parish councils to understand the impact of all quarry activity in the area and the impact of this planning application by Norton Quarry. Planning Committee is asked to note Upper Slaughter Parish Council's endorsement of the comments presented by Temple Guyton Parish Council at this meeting. We wholeheartedly agree with the call for a cumulative impact assessment and express our concern that this has not been required in the case officer's recommendation. Upper Slaughter Parish Council therefore calls for a deferral of this application to a future time to enable a cumulative impact assessment to be undertaken. Thank you. That's it, Chair.
Thank you. So that then I believe is our final speaker. Yeah.
It is, yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Then we move into member questions. I'm asking members to use their smiley face button, and I'm looking. Dr. Corwell.
Thank you, Chairman. My understanding is that the principle of development here was confirmed by the Minerals Local Plan allocation number 5, I believe. So what we're dealing with here is the way in which the development occurs rather than the principle of the development. That's correct, is it not?
I'm going to get an officer response, but I would say yes. Nick?
Yes, that's correct. The principle is allocated, so it is then down to the detailed considerations of the individual impacts.
Yeah. Okay, John. Sean? You're on mute.
Yes, I'm off mute now. I do think that we have to take very seriously. It's not just the individual impact, I think. I think we have to look at this. I know this is more from the point of view of the County Council as a planning authority at what was very well explained, I think, by Stephen Gower in his presentation of the cumulative impact. It is significant, and it does. It can affect quite a number of the immediate residents, obviously, which is very apparent. The visitors who are there, and of course, tourism is very important, and also other businesses. I mean, we have just down the road.
Sean, with respect, this is questions.
I know, but I'm going to come back to the answer. I'm just coming back. I'm just trying to
question, and then obviously
I want to ask: have we carried out a formal cumulative impact assessment? Because I don't believe that has happened.
That's the question, right? Nick?
If I may, naturally, we have a planning application before us. I understand the wider issues here, and an assessment has been made of the cumulative impact of the activities of that quarry. Now, necessarily, the majority of that assessment will take place around the very local impacts of the quarry. The further and further we travel away from that quarry, any number of immeasurable impacts could then add into a cumulative impact, and they're not naturally linked or directly linked or even indirectly linked to this actual quarry. So there's a very difficult assessment to be made. As far as we have the information before us, I have assessed, and my colleagues, my technical colleagues have assessed, including highways, we have assessed the cumulative impacts from the proposal, and that has to be before us. What we cannot venture into is looking at cumulative impacts from other areas during the consideration of this application. So it's very much on the facts of this application, Councillor. And we have to be careful not to stray into what if, and how does that impact? I think that sums it up.
If I might come back, we're talking here about a number of quarries in a very small area. And are you happy that this, what you're saying is bearing that in mind, that you're in compliance with the planning policy framework, that's national policy framework, and indeed the mineral local plan? I mean, it's actually, this is fairly quiet, this issue in the mineral local plan, but anyhow, are you happy that we're totally consistent?
Nick?
Thank you, Chair. As per the report, Councillor, we assessed this. I've compiled the report. If I'd have had concerns, if I'd have had material issues, which said there is an issue here, highways is an issue, that would have been presented fully to you. The application has been in for 2 years consideration, and has been brought to you with the highest amount of information that we could garner together in that time. So it has taken a while to come to this decision. These matters have been assessed, and as far as we can go on the current information and technical information that we have before us and available to the Mineral Planning Authority within our remit, this is the recommendation. So I am confident that what the report states shows that we've investigated as much as we can within our remit.
I'll come back later on, if I may, when we have more.
Yeah, okay. I've got 2, 3 indicated now. I'll start to my right with Simon, then back past Dr. Cordwell, and then on to Bernie Fisher. Simon, questions?
Yes, this is a question. So I think I was the last one to put my name down, but it's quite good. Can I just ask, is the number, is the volume of output and lorry movements changing in any way from what has been to date and what will be if this is passed?
Nick?
What we've got is a continuation, Councillor. The limit on annual production, which includes all forms of material coming out of that quarry, out of that main gate, will remain the same. And therefore it is anticipated that vehicles will remain the same until they're replaced with a quieter, more efficient fleet, as we endeavour to do. So therefore no material changes in output.
Okay. I will keep going on questions until members have asked all they want to. I've got Dr. Cordwell, and then I'll come on to Bernie.
Well, Simon covered what I was going to say, that as I understood it, the output was going to be the same, and therefore the amount of vehicle traffic would presumably be the same. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Bernie.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, 2 questions. One is partially dealt with. We talk of assessment. Have we done measurement? When they talk about air pollution, I don't know how you can assess air pollution without some scientific measurement. And the first speaker talked about equine. It is a massive equine area. You've got Tristan Davis, who's won a couple of Gold Cups, I think, over the years. It is an industry. It is a very important industry to Gloucestershire. You've got Hector Smith, who breeds horses in that area. And dust and horses don't mix, take my word for it. It is not good for their respiration and things like that. But the real question is, assessment is one thing, but I'm an engineer. I never assess the size of things, I measure.
Yeah. So the question is?
The question is, have we measured?
Right. Thank you. Yeah. Nick.
Chair, if I may, we went out to statutory consultation with the environmental health officers at Cotswold District Council. The control of pollution forms part of this as well. We obviously have a requirement for a dust suppression scheme to come in, which is vastly improved from the previous version, which, albeit was some years ago. So we're asking for an updated dust suppression scheme. And within that, the technical requirements of the environmental health officers will be echoed. I myself, obviously, planning officer, so I have to go back to my technical officers and advisors on those matters, and I can't stray from their advice.
I'll take that as a no then.
The details that would have been supplied will have gone through the EHO councillor. So any submissions that Breedons have made regarding to that would have gone directly to the EHO, and they have made their decision. Should they require any further measuring or technical details, they would have made that forthcoming in their response. If they require anything else, it'll come through in the dust suppression scheme, and they will have measures attached to that as well, so it'll be covered.
Okay. Terry Ale was waving frantically at the screen there. Have you not got the raise hand feature, Terry? You're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, I was waving at you because I didn't think you would, you'd seen me. So, do you want me to speak now, Phil? Or you?
No, this is questions.
Questions, yeah. Well, one question to Nick is from that 7.61 in the section of 106 money to 766. Halfway through there, it says the Highways Authority have been given the opportunity to revisit the existing section 106 agreement and identify what, if any, steps are required to amend the agreement in the light of the current proposals. It is yeah. Can you tell me, Nick, if that's happened?
Yeah, what we're doing, councillor, we have consulted with the Highways Authority, and those consultations are ongoing. The original legal agreement required a diversion to the existing Buckle Street at the time, back in '96, so that the underpass could be constructed. What we don't want to be left with is a liability for the Highways Authority should the underpass not be removed. And we don't want a liability either for the removal or the constant maintenance of a road over an underpass. So the Section 106 legal agreement is aimed at preventing that occurring and the public purse being a threat from that issue. Therefore, an amendment or a variation will be required to ensure that those works are carried out in the future. Therefore, not material exactly to this consideration, but it's something we want to ensure happens.
Yeah, so it's open-ended. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Steve Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. But my question's just been answered. It was regarding the underpass. Thank you.
Okay. I'm looking for any other member questions. Steve Nurse is waving at the screen.
I've got my hand up, Chair.
Yeah, well, are you not using the buttons?
I've used the button, that's why my hand's come up.
Software.
Yeah, okay, well, we got you anyway, so if it's questions.
The question is, looking at 7.52. We were originally, the quarry started in the 1950s and grown since then, but now the end sentence talks about allowing 5.8 million tons of reserves. That is that a permitted expansion to this quarry?
I think the answer to that, I won't answer for the officer. I'll let the officer answer the questions.
Councillor, just to clarify, the 5.8 million tonnes is the amount of mineral in this proposed extension. They currently, well, when the application was submitted, they had 2.2 reserve left. This will create 5.8 plus whatever is remaining in the existing void that hasn't been taken over the past 2 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Right.
No others.
No other members. There's one from, is Carrie online?
Yes.
Yeah, Carrie.
I am online, Chair.
Yeah, can I ask you just to clarify that point that was made very early in the piece around ultravirus?
I'm sorry, I did make a note of the ultravirus, but I'm not quite sure as to what respect Mrs. Magnus stated. So I don't know, Andy, if you've got a copy of her.
Well, I think the point she was making was that if this was determined or permitted today, in her opinion, that the determination would be ultravirus. I think that's what she was trying to say.
Okay, through you, Chair, then, you have a planning permission before you. It's compliant with it, or it's a allocated site within the Minerals Local Plan, and you have all of the relevant officer and supporting technical advice. It's for members to make a decision whether the technical advice that they have before them is substantial enough for you to make a determination. If you consider that to be the case, then I consider that you'd be making a sound decision today.
Thank you. I just wanted to clear that point up before we go into debate. That was the only question from me. Then I'm looking back to those that I'm sure want to get into the debate. I'm going to Sean Parsons first in relation to, unless you've got other questions, which I've closed that down now. So this is got.
Yeah, that's all right, but you can always ask questions in debate, actually.
Yeah. You do.
I really think that this needs to be. I think that we are still weak on this whole issue of the cumulative impact. It was also said when we were asking questions, we don't have some up-to-date measurements of HGV units. I would suggest that because of the cluster of quarries here, that a cumulative impact assessment is required. I don't think it would take a very long time. So I'm going to propose that this application is deferred to allow a formal independent cumulative impact assessment to take place.
Yeah, I'm looking for, I see Simon's indicated, but I'm looking for a seconder for the proposition from Councillor Parsons. Is it seconded? Is that what you were seeking to do, Simon? You've got a raised hand.
No, I was going to make a point, but I'm not prepared to second that.
Okay, then I'm waiting to see that there doesn't appear to be a seconder, Sean.
Okay, well,
so
I think that's very disappointing.
Yeah, well, we're still in debate. Simon, your hand's gone back up, so I'll bring you into the debate.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, as I see it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if the principle of extracting stone, or let me take a step back. I must first say that this is not an attractive site. I would not wish to be a neighbour of this site residentially. It is not the most beautiful place, but we nationally require the mineral that's being extracted there. So, but then to move on, the principle of extracting stone from this area has already been established. I think the only thing we're looking at is the fact that extraction will carry on for a greater length of time. So in that is the only consideration. I just feel that I'm at a loss to find any really good reason to not vote against as officers recommend.
Okay, but was there a proposal in there?
Quite happy to propose the officer's recommendation.
Right, okay, so I've got a proposal. Now I'm looking to see if there's a seconder for that proposal.
John Caldwell.
Dr. Caldwell, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that. I had my hand up and was about to come in with very similar comments to those of Simon. The principle has been decided by the MLP and there's been a lot of consultation on that. There's no additional cumulative impact from what is being proposed, just a continuation of the existing impact. Everything else, dust, etc., can be conditioned and is covered by conditions in the report. I did have the numbers down, 28 to 30, conditions 28 to 30. So I'm quite satisfied to go along with the recommendation and to second the proposal.
Thank you, John. Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Much the same as what John just said, really, having read through this application a couple of times. It's as what was said, it's a continuation. And so I just can't relate to that can possibly increase the accumulative impact from what they already got today. And the question of the underpass been put to bed and satisfied. I support it, Chair. I'm supporting the officer's recommendation.
Okay. Can I ask those that have got raised hands to take them down? Simon, your hand is still raised. Thank you. Yeah, because Terry's using the old-fashioned method of waving at me, I think. Councillor Hale? You're on mute.
Agree with Graham. There's no extra lorry movements and so on, and I would support the officer's recommendation.
Okay. Sean, you're back in again. Thank you. Raised hand.
Thank you. I think I'm not saying here that when I say a deferment for the impact assessment, I'm not saying here that I'm against the actual development per se, but I'm very aware of the impact upon of all this cluster of quarries on this area. It impacts business, and of course tourism in this area is extremely important. It has considerable impact on residents, and what I think one's really looking for is to establish a traffic management area, which of course, if we look at a cumulative impact assessment, that does. We don't have up-to-date measurements of traffic movement for the whole area. And a cumulative one, looking at this as a cluster, actually looks at those issues. So, and also one can look at things like fairly closely at the hours which the HGVs travel, and a number of other issues which are a considerable impact on the residents of the area. And of course, we have a very popular visitor attraction just down the road. All of these, I think, do need to be considered. I will come back. It is not that I think the application itself is all right, but we must try, as I think, as a county council, and it comes back, as I've said, to the national policy framework, and indeed to our own mineral local plan. We pay much more attention, particularly in areas of outstanding national beauty, to what the impact of this is on the area. So I would still ask members to consider a deferment. It would be quite short, so that an overall cumulative impact assessment can be looked at. I don't think that this in itself would impact too heavily on the quarry itself, but it puts it into the framework for future consideration. There are a lot of other applications in this very small area, which I think are pending or people are looking at. And we too need to get a grip on it. We're going to get to the stage quite soon where, quite frankly, the lawyers won't be able to go down the road. There'll be so many of them.
Yeah, I've got others indicating again now, and I do respect that, Sean, but I'm going to pinch a word that's used frequently from another authority, is that we can only judge the merits of the application that are in front of us. And by your own words, I think you said something like, per se, you didn't have the concern about this application, but the cumulative effect. And I think members can see that, but we can only judge the application that we've got in front of us today. And I think the officers made that quite clear, and I'm sure Carrie would as well. But
no, but I don't think.
John, Sean, please don't interrupt me.
I don't think what I'm asking for actually a deferment, a short deferment, doesn't take very long, so that we are then seen to be working within our own policies, because we're not at the moment.
I don't want to get into an argument with a planning member. I never seek to do that, but you started to talk over the top of me when I was going to go to other members. I haven't closed the debate down. You could have come back in again. I'm going to Dr. Cordwell, and potentially I'll come back to you.
Well, I think Sean made it clear during that speech that he has no particular concern with this application. It's a cumulative thing he's worried about, and that can only be dealt with if another application comes in at another site for an increased use of extraction. You can't pin it on this application. You can't stop this application because something might happen in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Caldwell. Steve Robinson, you've been patiently waiting.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm minded to support this. I am pleased that the contractor is looking to set up this community group, because I did notice that, like many of our applications, locals say that they're starting a bit earlier or they're starting up their motors, and I would hope that the contractor would listen to this and be mindful of this, and this would be able to be taken to this group and be listened to. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. And in fairness, I am watching Mr. King, and he hasn't a right to reply, sadly, but he was nodding, and I think he's trying to indicate that's very much what the company are seeking to do. I've got other people lined up, but I did promise Sean I would go back to him. So I'll go to Sean, and then I'll come to Stephen Harris afterwards.
I suppose, given the comments of other people, I do think as a committee that we need to come back at some stage, therefore, so I imagine that this will now be approved, that we do look at this whole concept of the cumulative impact. And also in relation to clusters. It has a considerable impact over time on these areas, and I think it's a very important point that do we attach any weight to them, or do we just continue to totally ignore them? But I understand exactly where the other members are coming from, but I think we've got to look at this cumulative impact much more carefully and be much more aware of it when we come to consider future planning applications.
Yeah, I respect that, Sean, and like I said, I don't like falling out with planning members, but and that is noted because, of course, that's something that can be picked up in the next iteration of the Minerals Local Plan, and those things would have to be considered. Sorry, I got Stephen there, so I don't know whether John. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. There is so much similarity in every clause, every paragraph in this application. It's obvious that there's going to be no change. The only change, I think, Chair, is going to be the formation of a parish forum, as it were, to look into the important parts of preserving the parish environment, and that has to be welcomed. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, and I did take a bit of comfort from the body language of the applicant, I must say. Okay, anyone else for debate before I move to the vote? No. Okay, then the normal format is Simon will call out a name and you stress either for, against, or abstain. Simon.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. What I've done, I've put the motion before you, the recommendation in the report that was in the presentation, on the screen for you. Nick, did you just want to clarify about that condition, just so we're absolutely clear?
Yes, indeed. Condition 33 on page 174 of the report incorrectly refers to the existing quarry being on the east side of Buckle Street and the processing plant area being on the west side of Buckle Street. Those are, of course, the wrong way round. So the correctly worded condition will say west and east in those places rather than the current position. That's the only change.
Thanks, Nick. So the condition, so the recommendation is there on the screen in front of you. Names. Councillor Rob Bird, for, against, or abstain?
For.
For. Councillor David Brown.
For.
For. Councillor John Caldwell.
For.
For. Councillor Fisher. You there, Bernie?
Sorry, for.
For. Councillor Terry Hale.
For.
For. Councillor Stephen Hurst.
For.
For. Councillor Graham Morgan.
For.
For. Councillor Sean Parson.
Abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Steve Robinson.
For.
Councillor Robert Vine.
Okay. For. Okay.
Councillor Simon Weaver.
For.
For. Councillor Will Winter Clyde.
For.
For. Councillor Phil Orford.
For.
4. So that's 12 for, 1 abstention. So the planning application is granted. The chairman has just had to take a phone call, so he will be with you within a minute. Here he comes.
So sorry, we forgot to pull the telephone out of the board, didn't we? Okay, so we have a determination. Okay, members, I move on to the remaining part of our. Can I thank, before I move on, can I thank those who participated and represented the communities? It is a balanced one, and yeah, well, obviously since you were disappointed, but at least it's had its hearing. Thank you. Okay. Moving on. I haven't got anything else left on my agenda. So since this is our last meeting, can I thank everybody that's participated? As you can see, it is quasi-judicial, and even members of the same group can sometimes get a little bit warm with each other. But can I particularly thank Dr. John, since this was your last planning meeting. I know we've got public rights away next week, and obviously there are tributes paid to you yesterday. I've sent some to you privately, but as a committee, we see you very much as the father of the house here. Your expertise is going to be missed, certainly by me. You've been a tremendous mentor to me, and I've always been very grateful for your advice, support, and experience. So every luck in the future.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. And you can always consult me.
I don't doubt I probably will be.
Can't afford it.
Well, that's presuming I'm sat here myself, because you never know. Okay, members, that concludes our business. Can I thank you all for well, not just today, but the support across my tenure in this chair. Thank you. I'm now going to beat up a Democratic Services officer. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.